The Parker family lives in a pretty little house on the edge of a deep green forest, where nature always seems to exist. Every morning, the sound of birds chirping and the wind rustling through the foliage creates a gentle and familiar harmony. It was a fresh autumn morning. The soft sunlight crept through the brilliant yellow trees. Emma, a curious and nature-loving 10-year-old girl, was playing by the fence behind her house when she suddenly stopped. Her eyes caught sight of something small lying motionless on the dewy grass. As she approached, Emma discovered that it was a small fox, its bright red fur covered in mud, and one of its legs wounded, stained with dried blood. "Parents! Come out quickly!" Emma shouted, her voice mixed with anxiety and nervousness. Emma's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Parker, quickly ran out, their faces full of questions. When she saw the fox, Emma's mother frowned, and her father said sternly, "It's a wild animal, Emma. We can't arbitrarily intervene." Emma looked at her parents, her eyes round with water, and her voice pleaded, "But he's hurt. We can't leave it alone. It will die." Mrs. Parker sighed. Her eyes softened when she saw the determination in her daughter's eyes. "Perhaps we can do something about it," she said, her voice softer. Mr. Parker remained hesitant, but after a moment of looking at the fox trembling in the sun, he nodded in agreement. "Okay, but we need to do it right. Call the vet first." Emma carefully wrapped her old coat gently around the fox. Her heart was both scared and nervous. The warm feeling from the tiny creature in her hand made her even more determined. The whole family brought the fox into the house together, placing it on a soft towel in the corner of the kitchen. The fox, though weak and frightened, squirmed when its gaze met Emma's gentle gaze. It seemed that in that moment a special bond was formed, starting a journey full of surprises and meanings, changing not only the little fox but also the Parker family. Parker's family immediately called a local veterinarian, who instructed them on how to give the fox first aid. While Emma's mother searched for bandages and antiseptics, Parker remained worried. "We can't keep it here for too long. This is a wild animal, Emma. It can bite or carry the disease," he said, his eyes full of confusion. Emma, who was sitting next to the fox, gently placed her hand on its soft fur. "Look at him, Daddy," she said earnestly. "He was young and scared. I just want to help him a little. When it gets better, I'll release it back to the forest." Mrs. Parker sat down next to her husband, gently placing her hand on him. "Maybe we can watch over him for a few days, at least until he is able to take care of himself. Emma will learn a lot from this, and we can do the right thing too." Mr. Parker remained hesitant, but his daughter's pleading gaze and his wife's gentle persuasion finally made him nod. "Okay, but only for a few days. And we have to follow all the instructions of the veterinarian." Emma screamed with joy, but she quickly calmed down when she saw the fox move slightly, its black eyes open, looking around with apprehension. She whispered, "It's okay, Rusty. I'll take care of you." The name Rusty popped out as a natural thing, making both Emma's parents smile. However, the conflict did not stop there. In the early days of Rusty's care, the whole Parker family faced many challenges. Rusty is very vigilant, often cowering when someone approaches. Mr. Parker kept reminding Emma that this was a wild animal, and keeping it indoors could be troublesome. Once, Rusty was so panicked that she spilled a cup of water, making Emma's father even more worried. "Emma, you must understand that Rusty is not a pet. It belongs to nature," he said solemnly after cleaning up the mess. Emma bowed her head, but she still didn't give up in her heart. She takes the time to learn how to properly care for Rusty, carefully little by little, hoping to prove to her parents that her decision was right. With each passing day, the trust between the little girl and the little fox grew, but the family still faced a difficult question. Could they help Rusty without hurting herself or breaking the natural balance? In the early days of Rusty's care, Parker's family quickly realized that helping a wild fox was not easy. Rusty remained very frightened and reserved, often cowering in a small corner of the kitchen. His black eyes filled with vigilance. Whenever someone approached, he cringed, his ears drooped, and even growled slightly, as if to protect himself. Emma, with a heart full of love and patience, is not discouraged. She spent hours a day sitting away from Rusty, close enough for him to get used to his presence but not to make him feel threatened. Emma's voice, soft and tender, became a familiar rhythm. "It's okay, Rusty. I won't hurt you," she whispered, her eyes full of sympathy. Occasionally, Emma would carefully place a small plate of food in front of Rusty and then step back, sitting still and letting him make his own decisions. At first, Rusty did not dare to touch food when there were people around. He only dared to approach after Emma had left, and the whole family kept quiet. But gradually, hunger and survival instincts triumphed over fear. One day, Rusty crept out of her little corner while Emma was still there, carefully approaching the plate of food. Emma held her breath, not daring to move, only smiling quietly when she saw that her uncle began to trust her more. Emma's parents also gradually changed their view of Rusty. Initially, Parker remained reserved, reminding Emma that Rusty was a wild animal and could not be domesticated as a dog or cat. But then, he quietly helped by erecting a small corner of the yard with a makeshift fence so that Rusty could go out and breathe the air and still be safe. Parker, who at first was worried about keeping a fox in the house, gradually became more concerned. She researched through books and veterinarians about the right diet for foxes, carefully preparing small meals for Rusty. The real progress came on a sunny morning, when Emma decided to try giving food directly from her hands to Rusty. "Be careful, Emma," Mr. Parker warned, his eyes watching anxiously. Emma nodded, taking a deep breath to gain courage. The little girl knelt down, holding out a small piece of meat, her hand holding still and not moving. Rusty initially stopped, his ears puffing up as if assessing the situation. But after a few minutes, he slowly walked over, his little nose sniffing and checking before gently taking the piece of meat from Emma's hand. Emma looked up, her eyes shining like sunlight. "Parents, look. Rusty has believed me," she cried, her voice full of excitement. Mr. Parker and Mrs. Parker, though cautious, couldn't help but smile at their daughter's joy. From that moment on, Rusty gradually became a part of the Parker family's life. Every day he became friendlier, no longer cringing or hiding like before. Rusty even started following Emma out into the yard, where she showed him the little corners of the garden that she loved. The Parker family also realized that Rusty's presence not only changed Emma, but also bonded the whole family. At dinner, they used to talk about Rusty, about his lovely little actions during the day. Emma's parents gradually see Rusty as not only a wild fox but also a creature that needs to be loved and respected. Rusty gave the Parker family a new feeling, as if nature was creeping into every little corner of their home, reminding them of the deep bond between humans and the natural world. Things seemed to be going smoothly until a cold winter afternoon, when the Parkers found Rusty standing at the window, staring intently toward the forest in the distance. His eyes were full of longing, as if nature was calling him back. Emma realizes that, although Rusty has become friendly and familiar with the house, he is still part of the wild world. "I think Rusty wants to go back to the woods," Emma said, her voice low but a little choked up. Mr. Parker nodded, his eyes stern. "I said from the beginning it belongs to nature. We only help him recover, not to keep him forever." Emma was silent, her heart heavy. She knew her father was right, but the thought of leaving Rusty broke her heart. However, before deciding anything, an unexpected incident occurred. The next morning, Rusty was no longer in the corner of the kitchen where he usually rested. Emma frantically ran around the house searching, until she realized the backyard door was open. "Rusty has left." Parker's family immediately ran outside, following the small footprints in the snow. Rusty was standing not far from home, his eyes fixed on the forest, but in front of him was a serious problem. The forest that Rusty had once called home was threatened by a fleet of logging trucks. The roar of the engine broke the silence, and the old trees were cut down, leaving a crumbling void in the middle of nature. Emma looked at the scene and her heart tightened. "Rusty can't go back if the forest is destroyed," she shouted, her eyes full of anxiety as she looked at her parents. Mr. Parker frowned, his hands clenched. "You're right, Emma. This isn't just Rusty's problem. If we don't do anything, all the animals here will lose their homes. The whole Parker family decided to take action. They contacted environmental protection organizations, calling on neighbors and the surrounding community to join the campaign to stop illegal logging. Emma, in a strong spirit, even wrote a letter to the town hall, telling Rusty's story and why the forest needed to be protected. Throughout the process, Rusty remained with Emma, as if to motivate her. Once, Rusty led Emma to a corner of the forest where light crept through the trees, illuminating a small fox's nest hidden among the dense bushes. This scene made Emma even more determined. Rusty was not just a lone fox. He is also part of the whole ecosystem that is under threat. The fight to protect the forest was not easy, but the Parker family, with the support of the community, eventually succeeded in halting the logging project. As the machines retreated, Emma looked at Rusty and whispered, "You can go back to your house." Still, she knows the biggest challenge awaits, facing separation and letting Rusty return to where he belongs. But Emma also understands that the friendship between her and Rusty will always be an indelible part of her heart, as a reminder of the connection between humans and nature. The day Rusty had to return to the forest was also the day Emma felt the separation most deeply. The whole Parker family stood in front of the edge of the forest, where the winter sun crept through the bare branches, shining on the white snow. Rusty stood beside Emma, his eyes sparkling but also full of hesitation. Emma knelt down, looking deeply into Rusty's eyes. "You'll be fine, Rusty," she whispered, her voice trembling. "This forest is your home, where you can run freely and live the life you deserve." Rusty tilted her head slightly, as if she understood what Emma was saying. He rubbed his nose against her hand, a gesture full of affection that Emma couldn't stop the tears rolling down her cheeks. However, just as Emma was about to release Rusty into the wild, a loud noise sounded from the distance. The trucks returned, carrying roaring chainsaws, shattering the peace of the forest. This scene left Emma dumbfounded. She turned to look at her parents, her eyes wide open in horror. "They're coming again. They're going to destroy the forest." Mr. Parker squeezed Emma's hand and said in a stern voice, "We can't let this happen." For a moment of determination, Emma looked at Rusty. "We have to do something, Rusty," she said, as if asking for the help of the little fox. Rusty, as if sensing an urgency, suddenly rushed towards the forest. He ran fast and skillfully, leading Emma and the Parker family to a spot before. There, they discovered a nest of fox cubs hiding in the bushes. Emma turned to her parents, her voice trembling with emotion. "We're not just protecting Rusty. We're protecting its whole family, the creatures that live in this forest." Parker's family decided to take immediate action. They called the Environmental Protection Organization, calling on more local people to join in stopping the convoy. Mr. Parker, as a member of the community, spoke directly with authorities to ask for a halt to the project. Rusty, despite being a little fox, did not leave Emma. He ran back and forth among the bushes, as if leading people to learn more about the forest and animal shelters. The villagers who saw Rusty felt a special connection between Uncle and Emma, and it inspired them to take action. Eventually, under community pressure and intervention from environmental organizations, the reforestation project was suspended. When the last of the trucks left, the whole forest resounded with the sounds of life, the chirping of birds, the rustling of leaves, and somewhere the small cry of a herd of foxes. Emma stood at the edge of the woods, looking at Rusty again. The little girl knelt down, wrapped her arms around her uncle. "You're safe, Rusty. Everyone is safe," she said, her voice low but full of relief. Rusty rubbed his head against her, but this time, his gaze was no longer hesitant. He turned, walked gently into the woods, and then turned to look at Emma one last time as a farewell. Emma stood up, her eyes watching Rusty's small figure fade among the trees. Her heart filled with a sense of both loss and satisfaction. The climax was not only the breakup between Emma and Rusty, but also the victory of the entire Parker community in protecting the forest, a testament to the power of love, solidarity, and responsibility for nature. In the days following Rusty's return to the woods, the Parker family home became quieter. Emma no longer saw the little fox snuggled in the corner of the kitchen, or quietly followed her into the garden. Sometimes the little girl sat by the window, looking at the forest, and an indescribable nostalgia arose in her heart. However, every time she thought of the forest that was now safe, Emma felt relieved. She knows that Rusty is living the life he deserves, freedom in nature, where he can find his family and integrate into the wild world. One early spring morning, when the first rays of warm sunlight crept through the window, Emma decided to take a walk to the edge of the forest. The forest now looks full of life, with young shoots sprouting from the ground and birds chirping everywhere. Emma sat down on a large tree, closed her eyes and breathed in the fresh air, feeling every sound of nature around her. Suddenly, she heard a rustling sound in the nearby bushes. Emma opened her eyes and turned around, her heart pounding. A familiar figure appeared, Rusty. The little fox now looked stronger, with silky fur and eyes full of confidence. But Rusty didn't come alone. Behind him, a herd of foxes peeked out at Emma, their eyes wide with curiosity. Emma held her breath, not daring to move. Rusty slowly approached, his eyes looking at Emma as if to say thank you. Emma smiled, her eyes watering. "You've done a good job, Rusty," she said softly. Rusty stood for a moment, then turned around and led the fox cub to disappear deep into the forest. Emma stood up, watched her uncle fade away, her heart filled with joy and peace. When she returned home, Emma told her parents about her meeting with Rusty. The whole family smiled, feeling that their journey with the little fox was not only a beautiful memory, but also a profound lesson in compassion, patience, and the inseparable bond between humans and nature. Since then, every time they look at the forest, the Parker family feels proud to have contributed to its protection. And even though Rusty was no longer around, Emma knew that he would forever be an integral part of her memory and heart. The story of Rusty and the Parker family is not only an emotional journey, but also contains profound messages about the connection between humans and nature. By caring for and protecting the fox, the Parker family realized that every creature has its own value and role in the ecosystem. Rusty, with his wild instincts and loyalty, taught them that nature is not only a place to explore or admire, but also a common home that needs to be cherished and protected. The biggest message of the story is the meaning of harmony. Humans are inseparable from nature, and any action that harms it will affect us directly or indirectly. The connection between Emma and Rusty is a symbol of the ability to cross the boundaries between two worlds, human and wild, to create a meaningful and sustainable relationship. In addition, the story also emphasizes the importance of individual and collective responsibility in protecting the environment. The Parker family has proven that, even if they are just ordinary people, they can still make a big difference when they act for the right thing. Emma's determination and her love for Rusty inspired the whole community to stand up for the forest. Finally, the message of love and sharing that transcends all differences is clearly portrayed. Emma and Rusty's friendship doesn't need words, it just needs understanding and trust. The story reminds us that, sometimes, it is simple and sincere things that have the power to change a whole life, a community, and even the world around us. At the end of the journey, the Parker family not only saved a forest or a fox, but also learned how to live in harmony with nature, and left a spiritual legacy for generations to come. Their story is a reminder that nature is a part of us. Protecting it is also protecting our own future.